It's 2022, and I'm still Brent Leary.
It's 2022, and I'm no longer Paul Greenberg.
Does that mean we're not the CRM players anymore? Or
No, we still are. I'm just not
Okay.
Paul Greenberg. I've completely disassociated.
Well, it's us. Can we at least say that?
Yeah, let's try that one more time. Like, do our
We're us.
usual.
No, it's the thrill is
The
gone.
familiar.
Anyway, we are the CRM players. Welcome to a brand new year. Do we call this like a new season or something?
Yeah, it kind of is. Now that we have seasons, but it
Well,
kind of is.
One thing that stays the same is this.
Okay. Thank you, Sven. I asked him to pick a language that would stump us, and I think he might have done it. Holy cow. Now, this one, I'm trying to find some like root original
Is
I can
this
tie
like
it to.
Mongolian? Because it looks like he's saying Kubla Khan at the end or something like that. But
So
I'm
this
not
is,
sure.
let's see. Kumusta Mga Kaibagan. Wow.
Yeah, anybody out there
Sven?
who knows what language that is, please type it in the comment section.
And Sven, you've done it. You have stumped us. And you
has.
remember what the word stump means. So I don't know what language that is. Hey,
We know
Ray,
what this language is and who it is. Ray Gerber.
the man.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, he is.
Wait a minute. Now Sven is just going crazy now. What's this?
Same
Is he
one.
just repeating himself?
Yeah, he's basically repeating himself here.
No, we need the language of the origin of the language, please.
He's basically I think he's just cutting and pasting his comment over and over. Hey, Sven, do that 500 times so we can say we had 500 comments. And we were that makes us highly interactive.
Oh, there it is. Anyway, welcome to 2022. And I wanted to start it off for me on a different note. The last time you saw me on the Playaz, I looked like Grizzly Adams. Do I look a little different now?
Oh my God. It literally looks like you chopped off large sections of your face.
I think I stopped at the skin level, but okay.
It's clean.
I shaved it this morning. Would you care to take a guess at how long it took me to shave all that stuff?
This morning?
Well, not the whole
you just
morning.
said it. You kind of gave it away. You said I shaved this morning, so.
No, how long did it take me to shave?
That's what I'm saying, the whole morning.
Oh. Okay. No. Didn't take quite the whole morning, but it took
Paul,
about 45 minutes.
It looks great, man. It looks
I love how
absolutely
Rebecca
great.
is guessing, and I don't know why I'm finding that a bit humorous, but anyway. Yeah, like 45 minutes to shave all that stuff. And not only did I do that, I had to come out with some fresh Rams gear. So I got the Rams lumberjack shirt. And check this out.
Whoa.
Got the logo on the side, on the arm
is
there.
Very manly. Right. So which makes me think you shaved your face with an axe. You shaved your face with an axe.
That's right.
Filipino.
Me and Paul Bunyan.
That's what I mean. He's wearing red, you're wearing gray to contrast, but it's still fashion forward. But at the same time, right?
Wait a minute.
Paul Carpenter has an answer here. So it's Filipinos
only.
Sven?
Oh, so that's the language.
Yeah. Paul.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Very
man.
cool.
I didn't have a clue. That was really good.
That was way too
so
good.
Paul, why don't you drop a comment as to why you know Filipino? I'm really curious.
You know what?
As to what makes you know that language?
It feels like
other than Google Translate,
kind of delayed because I'm getting answers. I already said it was 45 minutes, man. Okay.
But that's 2 hours in Filipino time.
Anyway. So welcome. We're glad to be back. We're glad that you're here with us. We got a special show because we're already going to start talking about what this year will be remembered for. I know we're only 6 days into this, but why not just go to what we will remember 2022?
We're literally going straight to a retrospective on 2022.
Why not?
Hey, who knows?
We don't
what
answer
time
to
is anymore.
anybody.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
So we
right.
can do what we want.
Yeah, the hell with all you people.
All right.
So what's
we're
Google
going.
Translate?
We're gonna bring on our crew of Playaz-in-Residence, and we're just gonna talk about what we think may be something big that 2022 will be remembered for, and what we would love for you guys to do is to start throwing some comments in for what you think 2022 will be best remembered for. And there's a possibility that you'll have to come on to defend that statement.
We will bring you on if you're willing. So start commenting, everybody, on what you thought was the best thing about 2022 this year. The most
Not a farmer
important
shirt,
thing.
man.
No, lumberjack.
All right, so let me. Should I bring them on one at a time?
Yeah, you can bring them all on. What the hell? It'll be fun.
I like the meh. That was good one.
That's my Larry Howard thing.
That would be yuck, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Let's move on. Here we go. Here we go. Bringing them all on all at once. One more. The Playaz-in-Residence are in the house.
Guys, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Welcome. And of course, we have our two longtime resident players, Rebecca Wetterman and Anand Thakur, and our newest and recently retired CRM player in resident, Bob Stutz, the godfather of CRM technology. Right? So, hey, welcome.
Oh, that's really,
Bob.
wait a minute. It's really cool when the godfather calls out another godfather.
Yeah, but that's
Guys
you know
should
what
be,
I'm doing.
guys should be like kissing on the lips right now, or
Yeah,
something.
but you know what
Wait,
it's
what?
you know what it is? That's sort of like an
about
alpha move if you really think about it. Right? It's sort of like, think of this. Brett Taylor is co-CEO of Salesforce, but he actually reports to Mark. So he's not really co-CEO. And I'm the one saying Bob's the CRM godfather of technology, which is limiting him. Right? So there's a whole alpha thing going on with that.
Wow. There's a lot of thought put
It's
into
like
pretty
that
good.
handshake thing on stage.
I have
Also,
no
they're
ego,
pulling
so I could
really
care less.
One thing that we have to call out, the last time we talked to Bob, he felt a little constrained because he still had a few days to go before he could unleash fully. And I noticed the background was definitely different now than it was back then. What's up with that, Bob?
Hey, the Bills are going to win the conference and go all the way to the Super Bowl this year.
I like a man with confidence, you know. I have to admit, the last time that you were on, I didn't have the confidence in the Rams that I have now. But that's what 5 straight wins will do for your confidence. So, yeah, just saying.
I, of course, had the same confidence in the Giants as I have, which is literally none. Right. But I've had that all year, so I'm very consistent.
All right.
I'll just watch you guys just figure out who's going to beat Rams. Bills Super Bowl will be hilarious.
Wouldn't it be great though if
We should do a watch
2022
party.
if 2022 was best remembered for the Rams beating the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl? That would be awesome.
No, that wouldn't be cool.
So,
Anyway.
wow, that is a perfect segue to today's theme, which is a retrospective on 2022. Right. So, basic idea is this. Look, let me sort of be clear, and you guys can completely disagree with me on this part. I don't believe in trends. I don't believe in people. I don't believe in forecasting trends. Let me rephrase that. I'm sure there are patterns you can identify out there, but I think everybody who does that, I'd say almost everybody who does that is completely self-serving, right? It's astounding how many tech companies forecast trends that benefit themselves one way or the other. None of them ever forecast a single thing that will hurt them, right? Which is astonishingly, blind.
It's just like analysts and influencers do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you on the trend.
Bob is coming strong today.
It's okay. It doesn't bother me. I have no ego.
Wait a minute. The Godfathers, and none
Rebecca,
of them
come
have
on,
egos.
You too. right? All of you guys have to defend yourself here with
man.
Bob. He's already
Blood sport
attacking
here.
us. He's attacking
All right.
everybody.
Why don't we
So-
do this? Whoever wants to jump in with their first, not a prediction, but their first thing that 2022 will be remembered by. Now, I know Rebecca has put together a list of really good, I'm not going to call them predictions, but they were actually predictions, Rebecca. But yeah.
It's all right.
And not all of them are good for me, but I'm going to give you one that's not on that list.
Oh, whoa.
Going off the board already?
Throwing a curve.
2022 is the death of the sales kickoff. You know, last year we thought we were putting them on hiatus. This year, everybody's figured out, A, not only do I not really need it, B, is it not a good use of resources, and C, do people not retain what they learn at SKO? There are just a lot better ways to do this. Give everybody who wants to be in President's Club a trip. Give everybody team building in a way that makes sense. But I think the SKO, as we know it, we won't see come back this year or in years to come.
Well, that for me would be, I personally don't have to get involved in them, so I don't care. But at the same time, that would be, I'd say this, I could see something like that happen up to a point, only because I think you are right about what you're saying about them. And I'm thinking a lot of companies just don't know any better to get rid of them yet. But I think you're on the right track. I had I'll call it this unfortunate experience, meaning nothing bad happened. I just didn't like it very much. With a substantial sales kickoff 2021. And I've never seen a more mind-boggling, I want to call it a waste of time only, except that there was a couple of things that people seemed to, were kind of off book that people enjoyed. But beyond that, oh my God, it was a colossal waste of about 3 days of nothing.
There'll always be room for the off-book stuff, and there'll be room for the stuff that matters. But packing everybody in a room for 3 days is neither a good use of resources nor a good way to get people to retain things that are important.
Okay.
Could depend on where that room is. If it's in Hawaii.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Having been to way too many of them over the years, I can tell you that they definitely are not a good use of time.
Yeah, I mean those are what do people what do some of our commenters think about that? I'm really curious. Actually, that definitely comes from I didn't expect that one. Really.
That's why she went off the board.
A lot
Yeah,
of magic that
completely.
happens in these meetings, though, isn't in the meeting. It's just, people plan around them, just like going to particular events. Maybe it's the event that really, it's not really the event itself that's providing value, or it's more of what happens around that. I've seen, sales kickoff folks, they're able to structure deals, make alliances, sort out bring partners to some of these things, showcase them around. Like a lot of it may seem like a lot of, maybe most of it could be it may not be a lot of value, but there is a lot of value in what happens around these particular events. And, seeing that happen is something, food for thought. Sales kickoffs generally are, most people are grunting about them. That's why they put them in these nice places, right? So.
Right. And that's why I'm saying, let's not call it that. And let's call it for what it is and look at, to John's point. Yeah, it's about networking. Let's figure out how to do that in the way that makes most sense for the purposes that we really get value out of them, rather than trying to pack everybody in a room to learn about new sales strategy.
Would you recommend anything
content
in particular that you've seen, Rebecca? In terms of, instead of the substance, the typical cliche sales kickoff content and information sharing?
I'm seeing a lot more regional meetings and a lot more meetings that are a day of bringing folks together, rather than let's learn about new product, new strategy, new sales strategy in particular. So breaking it up to say, let's separate the content, which is valuable, that people need to learn and grow in their skills and in collaboration from a sales and marketing perspective, from the opportunity for us to connect as people and get deals done, make those connections, which don't happen best necessarily in the same context.
Okay. All right. So I got one I want to throw out to you guys now, which is I think we will have seen, see, I'm changing it to a retrospective. That companies will start realizing that one way or the other, they're also media companies, as Salesforce has already done. And not just tech companies. And you'll see, as a result, lots of acquisitions in that world. They're already happening. I'll tell you one interesting one I saw a couple of days ago. JP Morgan bought 2 properties. I don't remember the second one, but one was called The Infatuation, which is a gigantic restaurant review site, right? Which is interesting given that they're a financial services organization. But part of that's coming because they realize that they have to deliver things that they ordinarily historically wouldn't have, different kind, in effect, a concierge service. And secondly, because I think they're realizing that they are not just, a lot of these companies are realizing they're not just financial services or not just a whatever service they are, but they're an ecosystem. And I think HubSpot acquired one. I don't remember what it was particularly. Stripe acquired one. If you remember a couple of years ago, although predates this, but Benioff acquired Time Magazine, right? I mean, and now Salesforce has Salesforce Plus. But one way or the other, they're starting to see themselves as a media company. The other thing which is interesting, because I've been researching the trend, the I don't want to call it trend, because they're researching the data basically. There's a number of the media companies that are starting to see a significant portion of their business is B2B, which is not something they historically have focused on particularly. And so you start seeing kind of the loops are starting to close. And I think we'll see a ton of that in 2022, or we'll have seen a ton of that in 2022. It's actually already in progress. So it's not even, I'm not going to try to dance around it being a trend or not, but it's just basically already occurring. So it's just a matter of, I think we'll just see a lot of it, that will, when we look back, will be a significant shift in the number of companies, be they tech companies or practitioner side, like service companies like, JP Morgan, companies starting to recognize that distribution is an important part of content in whatever form it is an important part of what they do. And the other thing, apparently, that is part of this is that they're also looking at, on both sides, meaning the media companies and the companies who are looking to acquire or build out a media presence, are looking at how to monetize aspects of that in areas that they ordinarily haven't historically monetized. So maybe, I don't think this is actually happening with JP Morgan and The Infatuation, but I'm just going to use them to the one that's coming to mind, is that JP Morgan would say, we have this restaurant site, but we also have a couple of services associated with that. Like, we'll give you a significant loan to go eat at the French Laundry, right? Something like that. But, one way or the other, they'll have some sort of service offerings that are premier. And it's something, to me, it's fascinating me. So, because distribution is kind of my main thing right now. So I think when looking back at 2022, that'll be the thing that become very noticeable. People agree, disagree, don't give a crap.
I don't think it's about distribution, Paul. I actually believe it's about data collection at the end of the day. It's not about distribution. They could care less about distributing content.
They have to
It's about collecting the data, because every one of those services, you do the click, guess what? They now have another data on you that they
what's
didn't
the data
have
used
before,
for?
right?
What's the data used for?
Look, everyone's getting ready. And this is what I believe 2022 will, at the end of 2022, we'll look back and we'll see the explosion of the metaverse into this new application realm, both B2B and B2C. I think it's going to be about, look, you have to have the data. If you don't have the data, you can't play effectively in the metaverse. You've got to have that data in order to be effective. And that's why you're going to see these, even banks, insurance companies, all these different companies. It goes back to, I always believe that this industry repeats itself. Remember back to the days of AT&T, when AT&T started selling credit cards and started selling DirecTV and started selling, right? They didn't do that because they were making money off of it at the end of the day. They did it because they were collecting data on you at the end of the day in order to sell you more services at the end. And that, I believe, we're just going through another repeat of that, but in a very different way, in a much more sophisticated way. And I think the metaverse, as people start to realize the danger of the metaverse, because there is a danger, there's a huge danger there. And I saw an interesting article that was done today that there was a statement in there that, as you become totally immersed in something like the metaverse, the toxicity that comes with that is huge at the end of the day. And if you think about that, that is really, it's something that I think, as a parent, you have to think about, right? Do you want your kids immersed in that, in that, augmented virtual reality all the time, right? It's just another way to hook people on things at the end of the day. It will change. I mean, look, if you think about B2B, I think the metaverse will change the way people think about applications, especially in the CRM space. I actually believe that there will be a lot of differences, even in marketing. I think, sales definitely, service definitely. And you see some of that today, you do see some of like the hologram service stuff that's been done, right? It's pretty cool, right? But I do think with marketing, the ability to market using the metaverse and that technology is powerful at the end of the day. It's much more powerful than a static ad or but if you can go in and actually have a virtual reality where it's that marketing message is coming in a very different way, in a realistic way, it could be very, I think that will be the thing to see how far the metaverse goes. I actually think it'll move pretty fast. And I think all the software companies are now looking at it, trying to figure out, how do I play in this space? How am I going to, look, I think the biggest thing is Facebook acquired Customer. They've done nothing with it. I think that will be the first thing you see from them coming in the metaverse is really customer service and being able to do customer service in a whole different way than what you could do today.
So on the metaverse, I agree with you 100%. On the data part, I only partly agree with you. Because ultimately, data is just data until it gets used for something, right? And it's literally not meaningful until it actually gets used. So ultimately, they're getting all that data, if I'm correct in the way you're thinking about it. They're getting all that data in order to understand the people or the whatever they're looking to understand with it, so that they can take an action based on, let's say, a more intelligent action, if they're thinking at least, based on what they know as a result of getting that data. Meaning, whatever it is that they're producing based on the data has to get to where it's supposed to go. And that's where distribution does come in. Because ultimately, we're still dealing at, as you know, at the end of every day, and we all have said this a million times, at the end of every B is a C. And we said, now you're hearing P to P, and you're hearing all the things that ultimately end up in a single individual who is, a person that people are trying to reach in some way that is meaningful to that individual, so that they'll buy something, do something, whatever it is. So I don't think it's a one or the other. I think that, of course, obviously they want the data, but at the same time, they want to use it in a way, and then they have to produce things that get somewhere so that they can be consumed. And I think the weakness of all these companies is in the distribution. I think most of them haven't figured that out at all. because most of them are still thinking very traditionally and old school. Like who reads white papers anymore? People write them. I'm not saying they don't write them, but who actually reads them? I mean, you're always going to find, look, you can always make an outlier case that people do read them. I'm not saying people are that ignorant, they're not, but it's not the way they prefer to consume. It's interesting. I was looking at this statistic this morning on Harvard Law Forum, I think it was Harvard Law Forum, produced this paper on CEO succession. And I was kind of looking at what the average age of CEOs was. And they dug deep in this. And the average age of CEOs and the median age and so on is roughly 59 years, meaning they're Gen X, right? And that's the group that's contemplating retirement right now, right? So they're not retired yet, but we're still going to have millennials and Gen Z as the biggest consumers of conference and the most dominant part of the workforce. And as time moves on, they're going to run the show. I mean, the company you just left is one of the few really large companies run by a millennial. So I'm thinking, yes, to your point, it is for the data, but I don't think it's in contrast to distribution. I think it's to affect better distribution to the right places.
Well, and Paul, you bring up a really important point too, which is as we think about the future of the CEO moving forward, whether it's in the tech sector or elsewhere, we're looking at folks that have to have more of a knowledge and experience with technology than we grew up with, right? So we're looking at, I mean, Brett Taylor's a great example where you look at, a very tech-led CEO as opposed co-CEO, as opposed to one that's brought on to run sales, for example, like his predecessor in the role. You look at different folks taking the helm at tech firms that are very much engineering folks and not operational and sales folks, like we've seen that next generation of CEO come in the past at major tech firms. And I think we're looking across the board at a new level of digital knowledge and engineering savvy within the CEO's office, not just in the tech sector, but more broadly than we ever have before.
I agree.
I want to go back to Paul. We had a conversation with Colin Fleming when they initially announced Salesforce Plus, like literally 2 days after they announced it. And while the headline was Salesforce Plus is going to be the Netflix for business or something like that, yep, the thing that he said that stood out to me was that this initiative was definitely a way to build a direct relationship with their content going directly to the consumer as a first data initiative for the most part, because we know what's coming down the pipe with the third-party cookies going away. And when you think about it, before all of this internet and things like that, when companies wanted to engage an audience, they had to go to a broadcast network. So that broadcast network had the relationship with the customer. And because of that, the vendors had to have the relationship with the broadcast networks. Now we're getting to the point where that's not necessarily the case. They're able to build direct lines of communication and engagement with folks without having to go, that route. And part of that is being able to create their own broadcast network, like I think we're seeing with Salesforce Plus. I don't know. I think it's almost like each one of these things is incredibly important. And if you don't have, the first data relationship and the ability to create good content and get it distributed to these folks, what good is one or the other?
That's fair. I mean, I agree with you. I think to be honest, I'm not arguing at all with you, Bob, at all. I actually agree with you. I'm just saying there's that additional part of the ecosystem that we have to consider in all of this. Ultimately, we're looking at, look, I'm taking a very broad view of content now, right? Which is, to me, ultimately, a transaction to buy something is part of content at this point. Everything's part of content, and that goes to your point, Bob, on data, because that's the one thing. If you treat a transaction as a subset of interactions, which is where I am saying content is involved, all of a sudden it becomes an amazing source of data as opposed to a entry in a bookkeeping ledger. So those are the kind of things that just the new world that we're facing now. And look, I mean, my part in the new world is going on the south side, right? I mean, I'm 72, man, which I am perfect for the baby boomer. I'm 8 years too long in the workforce. Like, baby, we should have left a long time ago, but here we are, right? So, but on the whole, it's just I think 2022 in particular is, to everyone's point, really a significantly important year for how this is all going to play out. And, it even allows me to give more credence than I historically gave to CDPs, which I'll get into some other time, but I'm starting to rethink how I look at them a little bit. Yeah, well, I used to be skeptic. I think partly just because it got so hyped. And I'm less of a skeptic if I think of them as an active system of record as opposed to a passive one, right? And passive systems of record are historic CRM systems of record. CDPs can be, and again, I may be wrong. I'm just trying to work this through now. So if anybody has other thoughts on it, please help me with it. But I think if CDPs are genuinely an active system of record, then they play a big role in all of this data gathering and actions taken on the data and the way and the results of that, and then the new data and so on. Again, I may be wrong. I'm working it through here, but I do think that looking back at 2022, that would be another area which we'll start to see a acceptance of what a CDP really is, as opposed to all the hype that's been thrown about it for a long time, which is like got to be in that market. So I'm going to call everything that has any resemblance to both data and an action CDP. So tell me if I'm wrong, help me with it. But I'm also thinking CDPs become, with at least that definition, will have become by the end of this year an important aspect of how people are doing actual business in terms of how they're gathering that data and what they're doing with it.
No, you're right. It's critical, but I think you can't call it a system of record. It's a living, breathing, real-time profile. It's not fair. A system of record, because if a CDP is done right, data in a CDP is actually time-based, and it changes continuously. It's not like a system of record where the data continuously gets stored and it just keeps building. The data in the CDP is really defined, and it's supposed to be about at that moment, the data that you need at that moment to do something, to interact with someone, right? But it's not I wouldn't call it a system of record, because it's not a system of record at the end of the day. And if it's done right, the data becomes transitory. It doesn't stay. It's not persistent at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, that's important.
So I just tend to disagree that a CDP couldn't be a persistent system of record. I think everybody has always, because CRM's been around for so long, everybody's been using that as a system of record. But CDPs, the way that I think about it, and I think a lot of the acquirers of CDPs that have happened recently are realizing that if they were to reinvent the stack and to deal with a lot of the siloed data that's on different categories, the CDP would have been the core system for that. And I know there's lots of perspectives, and Paul, you're absolutely right. Just like everything else, it all got hyped up. Everything gets hyped on every capacity, right? Every acronym we all know, I'm sure CRMs at one point were hyped at some degree, and then there was a
Still
level of
hyped.
normalcy, right? What was that? What was that, Bob?
He said still hyped.
Still
It's
hyped.
still hyped. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the, especially the acquisitions that have been happening lately, certainly a lot of the funding that's happened lately with CDPs has been revolved around understanding. I do agree with you about Bob that people are understanding what a CDP is for their particular instance, whether it's for, is it for the transitory? Is it to bring about silos? Is it a repository just for customer data and then everything else goes somewhere else? And, when we need to interact with customers or interact with prospects or, anybody in that level of engagement, maybe the CDP is the right way to go. But I think there's still some ambiguity about what that should actually be. It hasn't been time tested, but it certainly has a place that, CRMs really haven't been able to, or it's always been refactored to make it, do what it needs to do. Whereas these were ideally built, designed and built up to be, actual data repositories, and play a different role in that capacity.
Well, there's this notion of the time value of data, though, whether I believe it's persistent or transitory, right? The time value of data that becomes all the more important right now. The orchestration part is important, and understanding the recency of that particular snippet of interaction data is important, particularly as I think about moving to digital distribution as opposed to Paul's white paper example, right? I want to understand what Paul is thinking and feeling and reacting to in the moment right now based on what avatar he's using and where he is, rather than what he may have felt about
That's right.
reading a white paper when he tweeted about it this morning. So that time value of data, whether it is a snapshot in time, it doesn't necessarily matter what the container or the bucket is, right? But there has to be that notion of an ongoing intelligence and orchestration that a lot of the initial CDP hype completely missed.
Yeah,
Sure.
no, I think you're absolutely right. And the problem is people get very confused today, right? They still confuse a CDP with master data management or an operational data store, right? And the problem is if you talk to business people, they understand what a CDP really needs to do. And it is about the time value of that data. If you talk to a CIO, they just look at it as another database at the end of the day and want to make it into another operational data store, right? And I think that's the biggest problem in this industry actually is that good ideas come and go, but the reality is the people who are sitting in companies making decisions, especially CIOs and others, not always the most, I would say, not always the most up to date on where things are going and what needs to be done and how to do it, right? Which is why you see things where, CIOs constantly take one CRM system, swap it out for another, and they've done it 5 freaking times. Like, well, can't you get it right the first time? Like, all systems do the same thing. It's how you implement it, how you configure it, what you do with it at the end of the day, right? And I do think that's the problem in the industry is I think you need a different level of CIO. You really need people who are really hype and understand where the technology is going, where the business is going at the end of the day, right? I mean, look, and I know there's all this discussion about, well, B2B is not B2C, but still I'm a firm believer that B2B is still B2C because it's all about contacts at the end of the day, and contacts are people. You don't do business with a business, you do business with people. And those people are no different than a consumer at the end of the day. They are a consumer representing something else. And I do think that a lot of the things that apply nowadays, to B2C will become part of B2B. And I do think that it's getting more and more. And I think in 2022, you'll see more of that happening, right? And I think as you see like Salesforce and what they end up doing with Slack and how far they take Slack. And and to Rebecca's point, look, you have a guy like Brett Taylor. Look, this guy is like technically, I mean, you want to talk about somebody who can take it to a whole nother level. Technically, it's him at the end of the day. Most CEOs are not capable of that. And to Rebecca's point, I do think in this new world, CEOs are going to have to be very, very technically astute at the end of the day, because their business is going to depend on it. You know, the days of having salespeople as CEOs, sales is changing. The way people do sales is changing, right? Digital sales I mean, it's going to become more and more prevalent in 2022 than it's been in the past, right? And I do think there's, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think technology is going to become the driver again, but in a very different way from the past.
All right. We've had a couple of folks commenting with some really good comments. One is somebody we know, Ginger Conlon. Go CDPs. Okay. Kind of go CDPs. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean by that? What's going on here? It's Ginger Conlon.
Hey, Ginger.
Hey, everyone.
Ginger, as you all know, is a former Play-in-Residence, just to keep the bar
Isn't
high
it
here.
a graduate of the Play-in-Residence program or something like
A
that?
graduate of the Playaz-in-Residence Guaranteed Employment Program.
I thought when we got tattoos, they don't come off. But
Yeah, but you're guaranteed to get a good job.
Oh wait,
That's the one thing.
Okay.
So Ginger, you made a couple of comments, so you could, you know, expound on them, or if you have something you feel that 2022 will be best remembered as, share with us.
Well, let me start with the CDPs. I just wanted a quick example of a company that has used a CDP. Probably the best example I can think of is Xanterra Travel Collection. They have at like many of the national parks, they run the hotels. They do bike tours. They have Windstar cruises, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what they did was they pulled all the data from those completely separately operated brands into, or through, I should say, you know, the CDP, because it's obviously that living, breathing, you know, data connector, I'll say. And they were able to see things like groups that you might not expect from, you know, the cruise aficionados that might also, you know, be interested in bike tours. And they wound up increasing sales across brands by using, you know, by basically data discovery of their customers. And so they don't use it in real time as much as the promise of real time is, but in terms of bringing data together, like, they're just outstanding. So.
And the example you just gave, Ginger, is really the CDP is the DMP of the known world at the end of the day. That is why the CDP came into existence, was the demise of DMPs.
Yeah. So, and then my question, or way back before the CDP conversation, was just to Paul and Rebecca. You touched on this a little bit too. I'm with you on the white papers. I mean, there are people who still love white papers, and a lot of times I think they like to share them more than they actually like to read them. But what is
the headline?
Because they look smart. Well, I found this awesome white paper. You should read this. You should read this.
Yeah, that's right. You read this.
But where do people want to get their information now? And before you answer, I just want to tell you an interesting data point that we found in our State of Customer Experience survey, which is people still love email. As much as people complain about email, they love getting information via email. They love customer service via email. They will not let email go, even though it's also a complaint. So just a piece of information as you come back with your answer.
Well, email's an addiction, actually. I actually think it's classified as a narcotic, right? Well, think about how many times you wake up, well, not you, probably me, but wake up in the middle of the night and then randomly check your email for no reason. I mean, it's not like there's anything you really are going to do. You're literally half asleep, right? So I guarantee one thing, what I just said, not just me who does it. I don't do it much anymore because I'm basically taking a pill to knock me out. So
next time you want to make sure Christy gets into that survey, because
yeah, that's right. It'll drop your percentage by one.
She's not feeling that one.
But it's the familiarity in this case, it might breed contempt, but at the same time it breeds content too. So people really cool. Let's use it. We'll use it as a theme of something, a song. I can understand that. Look, I remember back in 2009, I found these surveys. I've talked about them in speeches many times, that Nielsen and Morgan Stanley had put out that said for the first time in history, more people were using social media communication than email communication. And that was 2. Okay. And, you base your entire strategy on that. You're probably wrong, because I could find 30 that said the opposite. It's just, the one thing about data, which I think we all know and tend to not really talk about, is you can find data to pretty much prove anything you want, right? You always have to understand how to put it, as Karl Marx used to call it, the rate of surplus, not the rate of surplus. Meaning
Groucho. What?
No, that was definitely not Groucho. Groucho was way too smart for that comic. So we have a kitten named Groucho, by the way. So anyway, what that means is that, and it goes to all of these, every survey really, is you have to take a look at the way you would look at that data. That's 2 surveys out of 50 or 20 or 30, is that there was a sufficient amount of social media communication going on to bubble up 2 surveys out of where 2 years before there would have been none. And that means you have to take into account the acceleration of the rate of activity going on in these, at the time, relatively new platforms, right? It's always the same with all these kind of surveys, because again, data is not just, they always say, well, you got to go by the data, and that's true, but at the same time, you have to understand the full-blown context of all the other things going on around it before you can actually use it in the right way. To all that point, you look at data, and if you're viewing it, you look at 90% of the surveys out there now, they're looking at, consumption for audio, video, as the main, especially video, as the main source of consumption, both educational and otherwise, and plus, proliferation of e-learning, and, to Bob's point, the proliferation of digital tools that involve video to onboard and do sales and things like that. I mean, I know what was his name? The guy used to be the CEO of Unica, and he was on the board of Clarabridge, and that guy. He has a company called like a Lego or something like that. What it does is he's created this optimized video algorithm for mobile, so that everything you watch on a mobile device is insanely smooth. And he's focused it around sales and sales onboarding as the primary tools, right? The primary actually output for the way, and it's the way the algorithm has general use, but he's focused around building it for sales onboarding and courses and things like that, because he knows that's how people consume. They don't just consume video, they consume video on mobile devices. Right. So he's built it. So he said, well, the issue on a mobile device is going to be taking this high volume of high resolution, massive amount of, data, and optimizing the ability to see it in a way that doesn't drive you to distraction. And he's figured out an algorithm that does that. And I've seen it. It's actually astounding. I mean, it's really good. I mean, you get a lot of that now with a lot of other things too, but not at the level he'd done it. So he can take a 5 gigabyte file and you get fully optimized 4K video, and would never know you weren't watching it on a movie screen. I mean, it just runs so flawlessly. So, but that's what I'm saying. These these are the things that people are beginning to concern themselves with in terms of consumption, or distribution and consumption. And I think, to again, back to the data point, it's basically distribution and consumption, even though in the form of content of large volumes of data is what it is. I mean, actually, one thing I've learned in the course of the stuff Brent and I and all you guys here, we're all kind of doing in the media side is, and it goes to the heart of this, is that, like, for example, if you're doing video editing and you're using, say, Final Cut Pro, that is a data-driven video editor, where the other ones are not, right? But that one is literally built around metadata and data, and it's organized in that fashion because they understand that that's kind of the way that a lot of the newer content creators are beginning to see and use data, right? So you have, on the one hand, the content creators beginning to understand data as a source or a way to formulate the content and then building accordingly. And then also the distribution through video and audio as the primary means of distribution. So, it's why, to what Brent was talking about with Colin earlier, Salesforce created Salesforce Plus. They're building out a digital broadcasting network because they know that's how their customers want to see the content that they provide. They prefer it that way.
Paul, it's interesting that what you just said about the data part, because we have, I know, a trends article coming out. Shocking.
What?
Right?
Thank you, Ginger, and we'll see you next year. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. That's like saying you root for the Patriots.
No, she'd be cut off for sure. If that were the case.
But one of the points that somebody made was, in the past, you used to have, for example, a media player that was just a media player. You wanted to listen to media or watch media, you did that. There was no connection to who you were. And now you have Spotify and YouTube. Right.
God almighty.
Wow.
You have all these tools that are, in this example, media players, but they're also data collectors of everything that you do, what you're interested in. And, then that data gets used either first party or third party or what have you, and it creates that cycle. So I think it's interesting what you pointed out.
Oh, I think this is to me, it's fascinating and phenomenal.
But it brings up what I think 2022 will be most remembered by, or maybe not most, but
right after the Super Bowl victory by the Rams or the Bills. I'm playing no favorites. Just to be honest, or to be fair. I mean, not honest.
No, I think 2022 will be remembered as the year that regulation starts really forming around privacy and customer data privacy. And because I think I'm going to start calling it the privacy wars, almost sort of like the current wars back at the turn of the century, in the 19th century. I think there's going to be big battles ahead, and they start this year between, the big guys who are trying their best to control the way privacy is working and rolled out. And Apple could be a really good example of that. They kind of threw down the first glove, so to speak, with the 14.5 update. And the impact of the 14.5 update was to actually give Apple, I think, a 3x increase in their revenues when it came to ad revenue. And of course, it put the fear of God into all the other big guys and everybody else. And I'm seeing Google backpedaling on the get rid of the third-party cookies, because that flock thing that they were trying to implement, nobody wants part of, because it feels like it just gives Google more power than they had even before. So I think you're going to see regulation. I'm guessing it's going to be at the federal level, and I'm going to think we're going to see a lot of lobbying dollars go into this. And so this year, I think it will actually slow up the march towards the metaverse, because as Bob said, the more happens into the metaverse, the more data gets created and more privacy really should be in place before any of that should happen. So I'm thinking 2022 will be remembered for that.
I don't know, Brent. I mean, maybe I'm a little too close to where the inaction happens to agree with you on that. I think we'll hear a lot about it this year. Whether we actually see substantial steps taken from a regulatory perspective in 2022 is another story. I think we'll,
No, I
I think we'll
said
talk about it
especially,
a lot.
especially in the
First
U.S.
step.
I don't think we'll see a whole lot. I think we'll hear a lot of talk, but I don't think you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of real action. I think in other parts of the world, I think there's been a lot of talk for a long time, but I think there's more solidification around, coming to clear cut laws around privacy and what you do. But the U.S., I think, is still far, far away from getting to that point, to be quite honest.
I
I agree. It's going to be.
I didn't say it's going to happen. I said it's going to be the fight will begin.
The fight will be there,
honest
right?
and just, I guess.
We'll
I would
have to
agree.
break out our popcorn and
The problem with the fight
So
around
that's
privacy
pretty
is
much,
it's always
the
geared
whole
towards
political theater is
B2C.
gonna be an
The
interesting
problem is it
take.
should be looked across the whole industry, because it's not just B2C companies who have that problem. B2B companies are no better than B2C when it comes to that stuff either, right? And so, but every time it's always focused on the B2C companies, but B2B is no better.
So we have in that State of CX report that I talked about earlier, consumers that we surveyed, the number one social, ethical, etc. issue that they care about, that they want the companies they do business with to also care about, above everything else, above any human welfare, animal welfare, green, everything, is data privacy. And what's interesting is that companies also listed number one, that's what they're concerned about most. So just putting that out there.
Anand, you were saying something, we couldn't hear it.
Oh, I was just I was agreeing with the notion that this will be a lot of political theater. We'll certainly see a lot of lobbying dollars. I agree with that. But I think that fight will definitely slow things down. It certainly will. It's intended to do so. We'll see a lot of injunctions. We'll see a lot of lots of very knee-jerk reactions to a lot of things, which will certainly hold everything up. So we'll see a lot of that. And I mean, we're seeing President Biden already placing his pieces on the chessboard, in preparation for that, with some of the people to go after, the big tech, and privacy will definitely be a tool of discussion and part of that, right? There'll be also like labor laws and all these other things as well. So yeah, it's more of an agreeing statement and just a little added flavor to it. We've seen this before, right? It comes every decade or so, and it's a different topic, and it just basically emerges when tech companies get to a certain capacity or size or market share, and there's things that come into question. And of course, it's midterm elections, so that's always going to add to the fun of everything as well. So, yeah.
Well, I have one really important statement to make here. I'm going to go back to the metaverse discussion. I'm still coming down on the side of multiverse and DC Comics, not Marvel, on this one. Well, here's the thing. Multiverse has already been resolved. I don't know how many of you watched the DC shows, but there was a huge conflict. The entire multiverse came together into a single universe. So we're done there. It makes sense. Metaverse is a mess, right? So I'm going strictly DC, multiverse only, right? And I'm just going to drop kick all metaverse conversations off my right foot and out the door, or over the goalpost. Over the goalpost.
All right.
Well,
and then I'll try out for the Giants as a place kicker.
I'll put my 2 cents in. I know we're kind of starting to run over time about 2020. I know I disappeared for a little bit. One of the things I did want to bring up is I think that the way, I follow a lot of the acquisitions and, investments and what's going on. We're going to see private equity start to take its place in a lot of the way that companies are going to get acquired, they're going to get mashed up, they're going to get resold. But a lot of that is going to be driven by talent issues, right? Talent shortages. If I'm going to, we saw this, Apple did this actually, as a matter of fact. There was a time when Apple was growing fast. They couldn't hire the people they needed to out of the Bay Area who had the expertise they needed. So instead of and then of course there's all these, rules at the time. You couldn't hire away from certain companies. So what did Apple do? They just bought those companies just for the particular sets of talent. It didn't matter what they were doing. It was, I just needed to buy you out so you'll come work for us. I think we're going to see a resurgence in 2022. We're going to look back and we're going to see a lot of private equity related investments, private equity related buyouts, mergers, and all in the namesake of, and a lot of the corp dev folks are going to be thinking about, man, it's not the technology that matters right now. We just need people to figure this stuff out internally, and we could just not hire fast enough. So there'll be some weird acquisitions. You're going to not understand why they're going to be happening, but look at the leadership, look at the talent base, look what, a little bit outside the box if that occurs, which I think will occur quite regularly. And certainly in our spaces with CRM, customer experience, MarTech, we're going to see a lot of, who's pulling that together. And it's going to be really revolved around more of the people than it is the product. And I know it's an odd thing to say, and it's usually not the most popular thing. Everybody always thinks that their baby is, pretty, but at the end of the day, it's the village that people are after, not necessarily the individual houses. So,
Okay,
Cool. Well, I'm kind of surprised that we went this whole show, and maybe the one thing that 2022 will be remembered for wasn't even brought up. So I'm going to quickly bring up what it might be remembered for.
BlackBerry.
This comes from our buddy Ron Miller, who's doing his predictions. Apparently, BlackBerry is going to stop supporting and I guess creating BlackBerry devices because they're all in on security. How many of you thought this was already the case? I mean, I completely forgot about these guys.
I know one person who still has one
Really?
that they use. Mm-hmm.
Look, if nuclear launch codes are on floppy disks somewhere, it's possible there's going to always be a BlackBerry user out there, right? So,
Well,
Maybe the nuclear launch codes are on the BlackBerry.
it's on the BlackBerry.
I myself feel kind of nostalgic about all this because way back in the day, BlackBerry is like one of my very first and very best customers. And I did a couple of road shows with them. And I even have an unopened BlackBerry box.
How is
Oh
that
my
possible?
God,
How
is
did you
that
not
a
even open the
BlackBerry
box?
88?
Is that a Pearl? What is
It's
that?
I don't know. It's a BlackBerry 8800.
No clue what that
Not
is.
even. Oh, do you think I can get something for this? Because
Yes.
look, it's still sealed.
Easily.
You
Just-
get some
just
for
hold
the
on to it
box.
for another 10 years or 20
You get
years.
some for the box, not what's in it.
I'll actually get more for the box.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually built the first CRM application on BlackBerry.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Wow.
What was that
What was it?
experience like?
Siebel calls.
And that was at
Siebel call
Siebel, and
center
that
for
was
BlackBerry.
that was quite a task back in those days
I
because
can't even imagine what you did.
the internet was not what it is today, and cellular connectivity was not what it is today, and but it was done. It worked pretty good, actually, to be quite honest.
How about that?
That's
Godfather.
amazing. Well, I
The
know you
Godfather.
built it. It's going to work. I mean, that part's given.
Built the first one on Palm too. Who remembers
Really?
Palm?
I had a Trio, a Palm Trio.
There you go.
I've been pulling out all my
That is a
old
museum
stuff.
over there.
or the first Kyocera connected phone.
I
don't
think
got that
Brent, I was reading about a big heist at the Boston Computer Museum. Now I know who did it.
I made a quick trip up to the Smithsonian Technology.
That's right. I was wondering why they had a missing wing. Holy cow!
Well,
Wait a minute.
by the
So-
way, I even got a early Google Pixel. How about that?
Jesus
I don't,
Christ!
I don't know how I got all this stuff. I know
I don't
some.
know.
I
They
'cause
just
I didn't
showed
buy
up.
this.
They
but-
fell off a truck,
Yeah, that's probably it.
Exactly. Exactly.
or they fell
right,
out of a
folks.
museum truck.
I traded it for Rams trading cards.
No, I would never trade a Rams
I
trading
know.
card for that.
Well, since we're talking about things dying out,
yeah, it was,
anybody have a prediction
Things
prediction
jet
of what
booster
technology is just going to go by the wayside, or a concept that's going to go by the wayside? Anybody want to take a dare and call something dead? Like email was
Cable-
dead
No.
every year and it comes alive in February.
Cable TV. The New York Times is predicting, or one of the writers for the columnist is predicting the demise of cable TV.
Wow.
Slow then fast, the way the adoption or the way the landline has gone.
Gradually, then
Well-
suddenly. Yeah.
Amazon actually
Yeah.
just put out this week that they sold their 150 millionth Fire TV device. So
Wow.
that's streaming. I mean, I cut the cord on cable about 5 years ago, so I'm amazed at people that still have it. But
Well, I still have DirecTV satellite only for the sports packages.
and that's
That's
important.
the only reason I keep it.
That's
'cause
really
of the
important.
Sunday ticket. That's it.
Bob may
Well,
want to. Bob might want to get that so he can watch his Bills put up a good fight in the Super Bowl, only
Yes,
to
it's
lose.
coming.
Where I live, I don't have access to any of that. I'm using a VPN and tunneling into U.S. television stations to get freaking sports on Sunday. That's
Wow.
the only way I can do it.
I would love to see how 5G is going to play a role in all this, right? I mean, I think if we're not going to deal with cords anymore and we're
That's
on the
right.
go, right? We're talking about mobility and portability is critical to everything that we do. Then if 5G plays the role that it has promised to play, that could be a real big game changer, right? I mean, you could watch the defeat of one of the football teams in a much clearer picture somewhere, in the middle of the woods, as opposed to having to sit in front of a big screen TV. So I'm not going to take sides, as you can tell. Like,
No.
I think that's too dangerous, too early in the year.
And on that note, folks, this has been a good way to start 2022 by talking about
Fantastic.
as it was already done with. So why not? It's good stuff.
We'll see you in
Um,
2023, the next show.
Yeah. And look, anybody who hadn't put a thought out there, put it in the comments section about what you think 2022 will be remembered. And maybe we'll talk about it next week. I don't know.
Yeah, or
Might
if you
even
think
bring
about
you
it
on-
afterwards, go ahead and
Think
keep
of it this
commenting.
way.
Yeah.
Put in your comments,
Get on the record. Yeah.
and once they're on the record, you may, not promising, be contacted to come on the show next week to follow up,
Do a TikTok.
no matter
poll.
who's on.
Yeah.
So we
Maybe-
can ridicule you and make fun of what you said.
And just remember, we're in the multiverse, not the metaverse. And
And on that note,
physicists think there are multiverse. There is a multiverse. Forbes
All right.
said so.
So we need to sign off. There's actually, technically speaking, 4 players in residence here. I have no idea what the order would be for the name shout out at the end. Do we just let them go for it?
No. It would have to be. Wow, I don't know. It's the same. It's like taking sides
I'll
on
just
the
go first.
Super Bowl.
I gotta go somewhere, so I got a meeting. To go to. See you guys
Oh my
later.
God. There it is.
Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you around.
He just won. Well, anyway, on behalf of the whole crew, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg. Guys, just
I'm
take
on
Here
it
are the
away.
players in residence.
I'm
Nobody
Rebecca
wanted to.
Whitman.
Nobody wanted to do it. No.
Okay, try again. Start over again. Okay, Brent, why don't you start? We'll take 2.
I'm still Brent Leary.
I'm still Paul Greenberg.
I'm still on and talker.
Still Rebecca Whitman.
When are you
I'm
2?
still-
I'm Ginger Con.
Okay.
Bob is such a
I was
gentleman.
just like, why am I still here? Can I
I'm
go
still
yet?
here. That's right. I'm Rebecca Whitman, and Bob is. I'm still here.
Anyway, we're all CRM players, and we'll see you next week. Good night and good luck.